Good morning, everybody, and apologies for the late start this morning. Having a few technical issues, but managed to put them all right. Um, and so today I think, have a really lovely topic. And so what I wanted to talk you through was taking a little bit of time to really focus on the good stuff and to acknowledge just how great you are as a person, as a teacher, as a friend, parent, in all the many ways that it's possible to be great. Um, and it's something that we generally don't do very much of. I think, particularly here in the UK, our culture is generally quite self-deprecating. We don't tend to big ourselves up that much. I think also as women, we don't tend to have that inclination to go, yay, I'm number one, I'm the greatest. We're often busy taking care of other people and maybe not wanting to push ourselves forward that much. And I think also as yoga teachers, we're probably conscious of trying to keep our ego in check and being humble and acknowledging all the things that we don't know, and that yoga is a vast area, and that we never reach the pinnacle, and all of those things are absolutely fine, but I think it also needs to be in balance as well. And I think the risk is that we end up dismissing the things that we should give ourselves credit for and really focusing on the negative, like really focusing on the things we're not good at, the things we haven't done yet, the things we haven't learned yet, where we might have made mistakes, what we need to learn. And none of these things by themselves are wrong, but it's about keeping the balance, in the way that we talk about yoga as a practice, as being balanced, between the yin and the yang, and the active, the rest. And so what I'm encouraging you to do today is just to give yourself permission to really focus on and acknowledge and applaud yourself for the things that you're actually good at. And it's about just shifting our mindset a little bit more towards the balanced middle. Because if we're always humble and self-deprecating, and then we're not really acknowledging the things that we're good at. And in turn, this may actually have a negative impact on the people that we work with. Because if we don't really fully recognize what we're good at, we might not really capitalize on that. And we might not then really share that with other people, or maybe pass that on as a skill. We could just radically underestimate our abilities and our skill set, which might stop your business from developing, and that might stop you from reaching more people. And even just on a personal or a teaching perspective, if we undervalue what we're good at, because maybe for us it just feels like, oh, well, anyone can do that. That's not a big deal. That's just easy. Often that's a little sign that these are the things we're good at. But if we dismiss those things as unimportant, or easy, or you think like everyone can do it, we might be missing the fact that there's a lot of people who don't find it easy and who aren't good at it, and maybe need your insight and your teaching to help them. So it helps other people also, for us to recognize what we're good at, as well as helping our own self-esteem and confidence and motivation. It's like we need to have the good stuff. It's a bit of carrot and stick. It's good to notice the gaps in our knowledge and the skills that we need to improve, but we also need to really acknowledge the things that we have achieved, the things that we have learned, and, get that little lift and that little boost. And sometimes what can be helpful is to have a little bit of a reverse perspective. And I think when we have been doing something for a really long time, there's a lot of things we take for granted that seem so obvious and easy that we don't even think about it. And I guess in everyday life, it's the same thing with, we take it for granted that we can just get up and walk across the room. And then when you have a baby and you realize as they grow that that's not easy for them, and we remember like, oh, we have to teach someone how to do this and build it up over time. And I'm sure within our own yoga practice and within our teaching practice, there are certain things, there are certain skills that we've mastered that now are such second nature, we don't even recognize it as a skill because it feels like, oh, well, that's just easy. Anyone could do that. And maybe with time and training, anybody could, but not everybody can. And so I think, first of all, those things that you find super easy, usually that's a sign of like what people call being in your zone of genius, where it doesn't feel like work, where it comes naturally, it's easy, that it almost feels too easy to even have that acknowledged as a skill or something you should be paid for even. I know this comes up for people sometimes. But I think also when we do this reverse perspective, when you look back at former versions of yourself, it's then that sometimes we can really see the progress that we've made, and it brings to mind, like, I love hiking and I love like walking up mountains. I don't want to be hanging off a rock face on a rope, but I love a scramble. I love getting up high. And what I really notice, and this is where sometimes these physical practices can be such a perfect metaphor, but there are times where, it's super steep and it's far, and, really starting to feel exhausted, and you're going and you're looking up going, oh my God, we've got so far to go. But if you stop and turn around, and then when I've looked back at where I started from, there's that real little lift, like, oh my goodness, we're up high. I mean, yes, there's a long way to go, but look how far we've come in the last couple of hours. I've made more progress than I thought. And I think that's so true of life, that we might have our eye on the version of ourselves we would like to be, and we might really feel the gap between now and where we want to be over there. And that's fine if we also turn around and see the gap from where we started and where we are now, and also give ourselves that acknowledgement. So it might be really interesting for you, particularly if there's areas that you still think you need improvement, is to look back, say a year ago. So this time last year, what's changed for you? What things have improved? Some things you've achieved. And looking back 5 years ago, what things have you achieved over that time? What skills have you improved? Can you remember things that used to really stress you out, or you got really anxious about doing, or you struggled or found difficult? Are there things that 5 years ago you were not comfortable with and now you are? And I guess within that time frame for all of us is the pandemic. And I know here I am doing a live in Facebook, also simultaneously recording on Zoom. 5 years ago, if you had said to me I would be doing a weekly live broadcast in my own Facebook group, I would find that quite hard to believe or to imagine or think that I could do that, because technology isn't my zone of genius, but I'm able to learn some stuff. you know, and then we do these things all the time, and then you think, oh, well, you know, everyone's doing it now, it's not a big deal. But actually, just to take that time to acknowledge to yourself, here was something that felt scary, impossible, not the thing for me at all, but now I'm doing it. Um, these things are really important to reinforce that growth mindset, to boost your confidence, because then the next thing that you look at that you think, oh God, I don't know where to begin with that. I don't have the skills for that. I don't know how. You think, well, that's what I felt like with this other thing, but now I can do that. So this recognition of the things that you have learned and the progress you have made, it's going to reinforce your ability to tackle new things going forward. And again, you could do this over whatever time frame you like. It could be looking back 10 years ago, 20 years ago, to when you did your initial teacher training. And can you remember what it was like the first time you tried to write a lesson plan, the first time you taught in front of a group? You know, when we look back at those things that used to be difficult or used to be an issue for us, and the things that we can do now. I mean, I remember spending hours over lesson plans, agonizing, reorganizing, you know, reading lots of books, thinking, oh, is this the right thing? And now I barely write lesson plans, because it's mostly in my head. I will maybe just have a couple of notes or pointers, but through the experience of teaching for years, we have little mini sequences, or I do in my mind, little mini sequences of things, and the knowledge of chunks of practices that are good for certain things in certain situations, depending on the energy in the room. And so as I check in with people, within 5 minutes or so, I'm quickly, almost like a Lego model, putting together, okay, I feel the energy is here. Everyone's a bit stressed and agitated. We're going to start standing up today. And I feel like the main practice should be this. And we can, and so all of that comes together. When I was a student, you know, as a young teacher, then the idea that I could walk into a class without some 10-page prepped lesson plan and be able to engage and teach something really coherent and useful and structured, that has a logic to it, without having spent hours beforehand, would have felt impossible. And so, you know, often as we gradually build up these skills and get more confident, we start to take it for granted. And so this is what I want you to take a bit of time to really think through, in all areas of your life, all the stuff that you're good at, you know, and it doesn't matter how big or how small these things are. We want to, and I mean literally, get a pen and paper, and your challenge is to write 100 things that you are good at. And this might feel like a massive, impossible thing, but once you start, it will trigger ideas for other things. And I think it's a really important process, and maybe we should try and do this every quarter, is to go through like all the things that you are good at. And it's about retraining your mind to look for and observe and notice, acknowledge all your skills. And every time you do something well, for there to be a little, oh, I did that well, I'm good at that. And it doesn't matter how insignificant or petty these things are, all of the skills that we've built up are things that are useful in life. Because if they weren't useful, we wouldn't be doing them all the time. So I've got a few categories here just to give you some ideas. Um, so obviously we can talk about our teaching skills. And so within teaching, there are a huge array of different skills. So it could be about lesson planning. It could be about how you hold space for people, how you make people feel comfortable or safe or welcome, how you might be good at connecting with lots of different people, how you might be good at helping other people see the skills that they have. You know, all of these sorts of things. It could be how you're really good at organizing, you know, your record keeping, how you liaise with the studio that you teach in, your bookkeeping, do you send reminders, you know, like all of these things, every tiny thing, just write down, like, I'm really good at sending reminders to people. I'm really good at keeping on top of how many classes people have used in their block. I'm really good at following up with people when they've asked me a question. I'm really good at responding to requests and incorporating that into the next lesson. You know, all of those things. So again, once you get going, hopefully it will start to, in a good way, sort of unravel lots and lots of little things. So it's all those things around your teaching skills. And then that could come into some of your business skills as well. It's like, are you good at showing up regularly on social media? Are you good at updating your website or sending a newsletter? And don't worry if you're not, but just focus on the things that you are good at within your business skills, some IT skills that you may be developing over time. Are you great at doing spreadsheets? It doesn't matter what it is, doesn't have to be sexy, glamorous, or super fun. Just everything you can think of that you're good at, and maybe things that you know other people might come to you to ask about. They'll say, oh, can you help me with this, because they think that you're good at it or you know more than them. And this doesn't mean that you have to be the greatest expert. It just means that you're good at certain things. And this sometimes is where that self-deprecation comes in, that we go, yeah, you know, I'm kind of competent, but I'm not that good. I'm not the world's leading expert. There are loads of people better than me. Those things might be true, and you can still be good at something. So it doesn't only count if you're the best in the world. It counts if you're competent and good at something. You know, it might be about your organizational skills, and then we can spread that out into our everyday life as well. You know, things around the home. Now, most people don't really love doing housework, but it doesn't mean that you're not good at it. So it might be things like, I'm really good at visualizing a space and how to make it homely. You know, I'm really good at those little finishing touches that makes a room feel lovely. You know, you could look at the things maybe you're good at cooking. Are there particular dishes that you make really well? Are you a good baker? Do you make a mean curry? You know, all of those things, like anything that you're good at, write it down. Maybe you're into gardening or flower arranging, you know, those outdoorsy sorts of things. And then we could think about other activities that you might be good at. Maybe you have a hobby. You know, maybe you're a great dancer, or maybe you're good at finding fun in everyday stuff. You know, we can think about our personal skills. You know, are you good at looking on the bright side? Are you good at supporting your friends. You know, sometimes it's useful to ask your friends, what is it about you that they really value? And again, there might be skills and abilities that you have. And some of our interpersonal skills, although we can always learn a bit more and we can develop, there's a lot of things that are quite innate because it might just be about our underlying personality and character. You know, you might be a great listener, you might be a great motivator. When I think about my friends, I know, and I love them all, obviously, but I know there's different people that I might go to in different situations because that's more their skill set, you know. So if I want somebody, you know, to have a deep spiritual conversation with, that's not something that every single one of my friends is great at or necessarily interested in, but there are some. And then, you know, there are other friends that I would go to maybe to talk through some business ideas because they, you know, they have business knowledge and they're a good ideas person. So, you know, it's these sorts of things, but thinking in with yourself, you know, what are the things that you bring to the relationships that you're in? You know, are you great at giving a hug? You know, it's definitely one of my daughter's skills. She's a great hugger. And actually thinking about children, very often children have this very natural, honest joy in what they can do. And you'll find with younger children, sort of before that self-consciousness comes in, you know, they're so proud of their achievements, of, you know, the Lego thing that they have constructed, or the painting that they have done, or that they've tied their own shoelaces. And we often dismiss that in ourselves, but it's really nice to channel that thing, because it's not about ego of being overinflated and thinking you're better than everyone else or being out of perspective. It's that kind of self-pride and recognizing that you've learned something and now you're good at it. You know, in the way that a small child, when they finally get good at tying their own shoelaces, will be like, I did, like, I'm really good at this now. I'm so proud of myself. And it's nice, I think, for us to acknowledge that with other things that we've learned that might feel a bit mundane and everyday. But just to say, yeah, I'm good at this. You know, are we good at multitasking? Are we good at, you know, our emotional regulation? You know, are we good at, you know, listening to people telling us difficult stuff without jumping in to fix it or talking about ourselves? You know, there's so many things, from practical skills to personal skills, you know, so many things that I'm sure you can end up writing more than 100 things, but try starting that, put a nice big heading, maybe use some lovely colorful pens so it's quite fun and joyful, and just keep going and leave the list out. If you don't make your 100, leave it somewhere really visible, like your coffee table, your dining table, or, you know, your bedside table, wherever it is, maybe the kitchen counter. And then every time you notice something, write it down. And again, it's about retuning your thinking and your mindset to recognize and notice when you're good at stuff. And it's this ongoing positive reinforcement. It's almost like having an affirmation every day, but you're basing it in reality. You know, you're talking about and writing down things that you're actually good at. And it doesn't matter if some of these things feel insignificant or things that we shouldn't necessarily applaud. The practice in itself is just going to gradually help shift your mindset. And it's about building confidence and self-belief, both for, as I was talking about with that reverse perspective, recognizing obstacles you've overcome, things you've learned, like the journey you've taken so far, so that reinforces your ability to do difficult things. So it can build some confidence and self-belief when you're looking ahead to the next challenge. Because when we look at the next challenge, if it is stretching you, then it's going to feel uncomfortable and you're going to feel like maybe it's too hard and you can't do it. And that's probably a sign that you're getting into the right zone. But when we look back at other things that we thought we couldn't do but ended up being able to do, it's just that reinforcement over time. I think also this practice of just noticing all the things that you're good at and making note of them is that it gives us a different perspective when things don't go well. And what I've definitely experienced myself and what I hear from other people, it's about the story we tell ourselves. So it could be, let's make up an example. You decide you want to run a workshop and you've advertised it, and maybe you just get 1 or 2 people sign up, and what you really wanted was a minimum of 10. So it's disappointing. But when things like that happen, what I often hear is then the story is something like, well, yeah, that probably shows that I'm not very good at this kind of thing. I'm not really meant to be doing it. Clearly, I'm not good at this because, look, it hasn't been a great success. I'm not the right sort of person. I'm not talented enough, or I'm not popular enough, or this just proves that people don't think I'm a very good teacher because people haven't been signing up. And we can just take it all on as a personal thing, that it didn't go well because of us, because we're somehow not enough or wrong, or not skilled enough, not talented enough, not something enough. And that's very deflating, and it tends to make us withdraw. When we can balance out things not going well with all the reminders of all the things that we are demonstrably good at, it's why this is based in real stuff that you're good at. And again, however small or insignificant it feels, is that we then have all of that to bolster. So when things don't go as well as we hoped, hopefully we can keep a bit more of a balanced view and go, okay, I know I'm a good teacher, I'm a good person, I'm skilled at what I do, I know what I've created is good quality. Let's look at the reasons why there might not have been as many people signing up as possible. And you start to look for practical solutions and maybe external things that were the reason why, rather than saying, oh, well, of course it didn't go well, it's just because I'm a bit useless and good things don't happen to me. It's about these stories that we tell ourselves. So if we say, well, on paper, I've created something good and I know I'm good at delivering it, but people haven't signed up, let's look at why. And then you can start to strategize a solution. And is it just that this is something new, and actually I'm going to have to run it several times to build awareness, to build an audience before I get the numbers that I need? Did I maybe not advertise it enough? You start to collect data and information and look at your strategies and try and find out reasons why in a practical sense, rather than spiraling into this negative lack of self-esteem, lack of self-belief. And so that's what this exercise is really aimed at, is just taking that time to bolster our self-esteem and our confidence, and just to really acknowledge all the things we're good at. And I think also, as a final thought, another reason why this is useful is we're all self-employed on the whole, and there's probably hardly any of us, if anyone, who gets an annual appraisal from their line manager, their boss, or, like, people in companies often get feedback over time. And they may well have a manager, or somebody that's senior to them, who's observing, potentially mentoring, and you have a regular appraisal, and they will do a review, and it's like, well, let's have a look at the work that you've done. These are all the things that you were great at. We're really happy with this. We've identified a few skills that you might need to improve, so let's look at some training. And it's that sort of thing. And we don't get that as self-employed people. There isn't somebody generally who's doing that for us. So this is one way that we can start to create that for ourselves, is to do this reflective practice of all the things that we've achieved and that we're good at, to lift us up in those times where we're going to run into obstacles or run into difficulties. And so we can, have that balanced view when we are in a sticky situation, that maybe, and this is a nice thing with having a list, that if you're having a bad day or something difficult happened and you're just feeling a bit down on yourself, because we all get that, and that's perfectly normal, that you can go back to your list and go, look, here's 100 things that I'm good at, and maybe I did mess up today, but it doesn't mean that on balance you're a bad person or a complete failure. It's looking at all of those things. And what you might also like to do, you might want to do that on a termly basis, maybe once a year or every 6 months, is send out some feedback forms to your students. And again, we don't have a line manager doing an annual appraisal, but from time to time, getting that feedback from your students is also really helpful as well. Because again, on the one hand, you might get some feedback that's really useful to help you take things further, if there's things people would like more of, or particular topics they're interested in, so you can respond to that. But also asking people, what do you love about my classes? Why would you recommend this to somebody else? And to have those positive feedback, again, as a balance point for those times when things are tricky and difficult, that, and I've, over the years, from time to time, I get lovely cards from people, and it's quite unexpected sometimes what they write in them, and I always keep them. And for days where I just, having a bad day, feeling my confidence is down on that day, like, having a read of those is just such a nice pick-me-up. So we need to balance those things out. So as a quick summary, your challenge for this week, get yourself a nice big sheet of paper, write at the top something like 100 things that I am great at, or whatever adjective you feel comfortable with. Brainstorm as many as you can in all areas of life. So whether that's teaching skills, business skills, IT skills, organizational skills, homekeeping skills, friendship, parenting, your interpersonal skills, all of those things, any hobbies that you're good at, any other activities that you're good at, write them all down. If you don't reach 100, leave the sheet out, and over the coming week, every time you see or experience something, you think, oh yeah, I'm good at that, write it down. And I hope by the end of the week, you've got more than 100, and then keep it somewhere that you can view, to just give yourself that little bit of positive affirmation to boost your confidence and your self-esteem, so that you have this really lovely energy that you can take into your classes and share with your students. So do let me know how you get on. I always love to hear little insights or aha moments, because sometimes those things are really insightful for other people as well. Have fun doing this, and I'll look forward to catching up with you same time next, well, same place, and hopefully at the correct time, 10 o'clock next week. All right, take care. Bye-bye.